Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of March, the Aries equinox and the full supermoon that we have coming up on the 28th. Now, the first big milestone in this second half of March is the Aries equinox. And this is happening on the 20th of March. It's happening at 2:38 a.m. Pacific and 10:38 a.m. UK time. Now, this is always an important point because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. And so for astrologers, when the sun enters the sign of Aries in the tropical zodiac, this is tropical Western astrology, that is really the beginning of the astrological year. So it's always a very important point. And that chart for that moment almost acts like a backdrop. It's like striking a tuning fork, and it acts as a backdrop for the following 12 months, sets up a lot of the themes. So, but it's even more important this time as a new beginning, because this is the first Aries equinox that we have had since that very important Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at the beginning of Aquarius, air sign, on the 21st of December, when there was a big surge of energy. So this is a bigger new beginning because of that. We're in a whole new air paradigm for about another 200 years as those repeating Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happen every 20 years, but always in air signs going forward. So it's a whole shift of paradigm. So it's a bigger new beginning because of that. But also it's a bigger new beginning because of these immense waves of photonic gamma ray neutrino light that are coming onto the Earth. And many people are feeling these symptoms. In many ways, these physical symptoms can be quite uncomfortable, can be dizziness, headaches, sleeplessness, anxiety, etc. But this is because we are all being upgraded by this new light. So this is a much bigger beginning because, again, it's in this amazing context of roughly every 12,000 years, the Earth moves through that photon belt. So this is very rare. And you can look at the work of roryduff.com. I'll put the link below. He talks about some of this, but he also, in his work as a geobiologist and master dowser, has discovered that the day before every equinox and solstice, so that's 4 days in the year, all of the energy lines on the Earth come into harmony. And those are wonderful days to meditate or pray or set intentions. So that's what the ancient people sensed, because they always had their ceremonies around about the equinoxes and the solstices, and they always form peaks of energy really going through the year. And this is what we're going to see going through this year, particularly because that square between Uranus and Saturn is going to produce those peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs. But for many of us, we are feeling this surge of energy right now. We're feeling that surge of energy. It's going to crest, I believe, at this Aries equinox. And I believe that energy is going to carry through for about another month. And then when we get into May and June, those are big months of change as well, because those are the eclipse months. So coming back to this equinox, at times of solstices and equinoxes, the Earth's magnetic field can actually produce cracks. And what that does is let even more high vibrational light onto the Earth. It's known as the Russell McPherron effect. And I will put Russell McPherron below so you can go off and do your own research about this. But this is where science and spirituality are really merging, where we're starting to understand the science of why the energy is so powerful at certain times. So this is a big, very important day. 21st of December was very important, big surge. Many people felt it. This is another major upgrade in our consciousness coming in right now, where we're riding to that crest. So it also, if 0 of Aries, or within 2 degrees of that, from 28 to the degrees of the mutables to 2 degrees of any cardinal sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, if you have any planets or angles there, you may well feel the surge of this big new beginning happening on the 20th of March. Now, let's think about Aries energy. Aries is leadership energy and warrior energy. So with regard to leadership, ask yourself, are you the leader in your life? Or do you look to external cues for leadership, people telling you what to do? Now, to some extent, if you're in a corporation, a big organization, that's going to happen. But nevertheless, in terms of your state of being, you can still be the leader, that you are determining, you are creating your life. This is very initiatory energy, that it's starting from us. I'm going to talk a lot more about this as we go through this video. The second area that Aries is very linked to is warrior energy, because Mars rules Aries. Mars in myth was god of war. So it can be warrior energy in terms of, yes, it can be fighting for your principles, but it's really, I'm meaning here, warrior energy in terms of being a crusader, standing up for your principles and being a crusader for love and a crusader for light. So again, this is coming from you. This is initiatory. Now, I've talked endlessly, and so have many other people, about we create our own reality through our thinking, through our emotions, through our frequency. I am feeling that right now more clearly than I've ever felt it before. I really am, that the old is falling away, and I really feel like I'm kind of starting afresh with a blank canvas, a clean piece of paper. And the ingredients, the cook's ingredients I want in my future, I am going to decide. I'm not going to be told by the news, the nightly news, what ingredients I should include in my future. That's why you can really shift your frequency just by stopping watching the news. So coming from you, you're living from the inside out rather than the outside in. Now, another beautiful aspect at this Aries equinox is that Salacia is at the midpoint of the Sun and Chiron in Aries. So Salacia, I've talked about before. She's a Kuiper belt object, way out in space, beyond the orbits of Neptune and Pluto, this very fine consciousness, fine energy that they represent. And Salacia in myth was the wife of Neptune. She represents mermaid energy, very iridescent, beautiful. And she is linked to the glistening, shimmering of the sunlight and the moonlight on the sea, this very high kind of reflecting, refracting energy. To me, she is linked to photonic light. Because we are really seeing that, or I mean, I can see it, lots of people can see it, because it's that very fine, almost ethereal, very white, bright light that is different from the kind of softer light than we've had in the past. This is what's upgrading us. So is this saying, with Salacia at the midpoint of the Sun and Chiron, is this saying that we can heal through light? Absolutely. I mean, light technologies are becoming more common in healing, and more of these are going to become publicly available. So that's very important too, as a piece of this Aries equinox, as a promise of light healing us. If we look at the Aries equinox set for Washington, DC, we see that Jupiter in Aquarius is on the ascendant. Now, does that mean that we're going to have more freedom in the world, or more freedom in America? Several states are really opening up. Texas, I believe, Mississippi, there may be some others, possibly. Or does it really refer to more legal issues? Jupiter rules Sagittarius, legalities, more legal issues around Aquarius, freedoms and human rights. I think it's got a lot to do with that running through this year. If we look at the astrocartography for this Aries equinox, remember this chart is running for 12 months. If we look to say where Mars is, when Mars becomes angular, that's when planets become powerful, when they become angular. That falls through China, on the midheaven of China. The midheaven of a country in mundane astrology is linked to the leadership or the government. Does that mean that over the next 12 months or so, China could become more assertive? Very possibly. If we look at where Uranus becomes angular at this equinox, it falls just east of Australia. It's going through the midheaven of India. It is on the IC, the land, the home base, running through Mexico and up through central US. So remember, Uranus is this much more disruptive, eruptive, often linked with earthquakes, but really it's about radical change. So it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. It's also linked to human rights and freedoms, of course, in its rulership of Aquarius. So this is very interesting. The other aspects that are of note at this equinox is that the North Node, our collective future in Gemini, is at the midpoint of the Moon and Mars. Moon, the people; Mars, assertiveness, anger. In addition, in this chart, Mars is square to Mercury. So could it be that the people are angry, the people have angry words to say? Well, what may they be about? Well, the North Node is in Gemini. That's about facts and information. So could it be that some new information coming out around about this time that we may feel feisty about? Well, on the 24th of March, we have Mercury squaring the nodal axis. That's very often a time when new perceptions or new information comes to light. So we'll see how this works. It's important to note on the 26th of March that Mars is conjunct the North Node in Gemini. Now, this happens roughly every 2 years. However, very often there is an assertive event in the collective, on the public stage in some way. I mean, one of the times this happened when Mars was conjunct the nodal axis was at 9/11. And I'm not suggesting that there's going to be anything that dramatic, but just observe, because you understand the archetype of Mars is about anger, assertion, etc. So we'll see what happens. Then on the 28th of March, this happens at 11:48 a.m. Pacific and 7:48 p.m. UK time. We have a full supermoon at 8 of Libra, 8:08, 8 degrees and 8 minutes of Libra. Supermoon because the moon is much closer to the Earth, and that, of course, has a greater pull on the tides, but also the tectonic plates. So see where 8 degrees of Libra falls in your chart, which house area. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to this link above. You can go to 2-part tutorial video series from my store, and that will explain exactly from zero, really, how to find these points in your chart, these house areas, and what anything I'm talking about in these updates every time means for you. You can use them ad infinitum. So see where this falls, because personally, this can so often be a culmination, a completion, a closure, but also it can shine light on something you didn't know before. Now, particularly because it's in Libra, this could be around relationship issues. Something comes to light which you weren't aware of, and that can change things. Or a relationship comes to a close, full supermoon. It's often when feelings are running very high because the moon is at its peak now. In addition, if 8 of Libra falls in your 5th house, your 7th house, your 11th house in your chart, those are all relationship houses, or is in hard aspect, conjunction, square, opposition to the rulers of those houses, then it may manifest in a greater way in relationship too. Now, at this full moon, we are going to also have some interesting aspects. We've got the Sun, Chiron, and Venus all in a very tight conjunction. They're all at 8 degrees of Aries. And they are also, therefore, still conjunct Salacia at 4 degrees of Aries. So everything I've said about Salacia, about healing through light, and now with Venus involved, healing through love, would apply at this full supermoon. So that's very important. It's interesting that Libra as a sign is about fairness, equality, cooperation. It's very linked to social justice. Are things fair in society? Don't know what you think. I don't think they're very fair at all. So the two signs that are linked to the law are Libra, because it's the scales of justice, and Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, because it's about the truth. Those are the two signs that come up again and again when I look at charts of people involved in the law. So what's interesting here as well is the South Node this year is in Sagittarius. The South Node is our collective past. What's falling away? What may not be working very well? For instance, Sagittarius also rules the educational system. Is that working well? Well, not very in a lot of areas because of the pandemic, etc. Sagittarius, as I say, is also linked to the law. So there may be times, as is Libra, so there may be times, particularly when it's the law as it has been, South Node, the way part of the establishment, let's say, where things are not working well legally. That may become apparent. I think we can all think of some very big instances recently, particularly if you look west, of where that hasn't worked. However, with Jupiter in Aquarius for most of this year, legal issues around human rights and freedoms, Aquarius is grassroots up, people power up. I mentioned in the last video about the women's suffragette movement. So where the power comes from the people collectively, that can force a change in the law. We may be setting new legal precedents, just as the women's suffragette movement did, 1920s. So think of it that way, but I think legal issues could be very prominent this year, and maybe particularly around this Libra full moon as well. This drive for change coming from the people, the grassroots up, is really emphasized by the moon at 8 of Libra being exactly quincunx Uranus at 8 of Taurus. So this creates a restlessness in the people moon, a drive for radical change, a drive for more freedom. Now, what will help us at this full supermoon is that Mercury is tightly conjunct Neptune in Pisces. That can give great inspiration and imagination, but we also have an air grand trine. We have the moon in Libra, trine to Mars in Gemini, they're both trine to Saturn in Aquarius. So we've got an equilateral triangle. And this is about birthing new ideas. That can stay for the long term, Saturn. We're bringing up new ideas that can stay for the long term. So that can feel very positive moving forwards. There's going to be so much innovation this year with Uranus being so strong and those planets in Aquarius being so prominent. So there's also a speedy quality at this time. All of the planets are moving direct until 27th of April when Pluto moves retrograde. But until then, all the planets are moving direct. That creates a momentum. The planets in Aries at the moment, Aries is also speedy, wants to do things quickly. Mars is in Gemini, both of them, both Mars and Gemini as a planet and a sign are speedy. Come on, let's do things quickly. And the North Node is in Gemini, against kind of Puck in Shakespeare. It's mercurial, it's quick. So, but the North Node in Gemini, as I mentioned last time, is very connected to choices. And every single one of us on this earth, I believe, is going to be making some major choices in their lives this year. But because of this speediness, and because the North Node is in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, it's a sign of the head, a sign of the mental faculty. Always remember to drop into the heart before making big decisions. Don't just do it quickly with the head. Don't just do it quickly because you've read it in a newspaper. Dive into the heart, because the heart is our much better guide for our intuition than our head. And this really takes me to this idea of, I mentioned this a little bit last time, but I'm very aware of this strong symbolism of Uranus in Taurus. Now, Uranus is going to stay in Taurus until 2026, and that has all kinds of implications for extreme Earth events. Taurus rules the Earth. Uranus is an eruptive energy, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. But Taurus is also representative of the human body. And these are not easy bedfellows. So if we think of Taurus as tuning into nature, the natural rhythms of the earth, doing things very simply in a traditional way, planting by the phases of the moon, etc., etc. It's a tuning into nature that is completely organic. So we have a bit of a split here between the organic and the inorganic, because Uranus doesn't always, going to go on to that, represent the inorganic because it's very linked to science and innovation. So organic versus inorganic. Equally, we can think with Taurus our natural biology versus technology. Uranus, technology. So if you think of those two sets of pairs, if you like, as the contexts from which you make your decision, we could be making some very different decisions in our lives and going forwards. And with astrology, if we have this kind of clash between Uranus and Taurus, which are so incredibly different, we will always say, okay, how do we integrate them to work to their best? Well, I think, and this I get very excited about, this is about us birthing a new inner technology, a new technology of consciousness. Because if you do that simple thing for free at home anytime of breathing, you close your eyes, you breathe in and out slowly through your heart. Imagine that your heart is a lung. That will slow and deepen your breath. Your energy will become more coherent. You activate the parasympathetic nervous system. You expand your aura. We know from the work of heart math that the heart sends more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. So we are sending up, particularly if you can feel the emotions of, well, correction to emotions, of the feelings of love and gratitude. And remember what Dr. David Hawkins said, that love is not an emotion, it's a consciousness, it's a state of being. If we can really feel that, then we start to establish not only much greater coherence, we're sending out love to the world, but we're also establishing a very coherent and strong heart-brain connection. But in addition to that, this will really start to activate our third eye, because Uranus and Aquarius energy is linked to Kundalini energy. And isn't it interesting that all this photonic light coming in is going to activate our third eye? But the heart links to that third eye. So if with your eyes shut, you're imagining you're breathing in and out through the heart, you're expanding your heart field, your love, but you're also kind of with closed eyes looking up to this third eye. This becomes your inner technology, Uranus in Taurus. This becomes an organic, new technology of consciousness. And I find that really, really exciting, because you're using the planetary principle and the sign principle, if you like, the sign archetype, to their best and integrated. So I hope that's all made sense to you. I've covered a lot here. The Aries equinox, I think, is super important. I think the Aries equinox is pivotal, actually. These are times when we can literally jump timelines. I mean, we can jump timelines in every second. We know we can, because they're infinite numbers of timelines. But particularly at high frequency, high energy points like this, it becomes easier as a kind of lift off. So I think this is very important. So try and find time to meditate, be in nature, if you're legally allowed to, be with like-minded people, etc. And really get this feeling of creating your life from the inside out. Because when we have a lot of information coming at us through the day that it does not represent what we want in our future, that can drag our frequency down. And I know it's incredibly, I think, tougher for people than it's ever been in our entire lives. But as far as you are able, can you screen out that input or the effect of that input on you and say, no, I determine my state of being. I am the creator. I am the warrior. I am the leader of my life. And as I say, I felt that more strongly this week than I've ever felt it in my entire lifetime. There have been big energy shifts this week. I'm sure many of you have felt it. Anyway, hope that's been helpful. Enjoy this Aries equinox and the kind of take off, and enjoy the full supermoon in Libra on the 28th. And if you'd like more information about my books, my teaching videos, very long monthly newsletter, just check out my website, pamgregory.com. Bless you all. Bye for now.